Morning, Internet. Welcome to Tuesday. Tuesday, I wonder if it's called Tuesday because it's two-day, like Tuesday, like the second day, too. Anyway, let's get back on track. Sorry about that digression. Actually, I'm not sorry. You should be sorry about that digression. But I'm sorry about that faux level of aggression. In any case, today we wanted to sort of just briefly discuss one thing this morning, and that is the following. One of the parts of this project that I find really, really interesting is the element of human interaction and sort of the idea of finding or building a community and stimulating or trying to stimulate conversation around the space of learning to code LTC. And so one of the things that I would be really, really interested in sort of getting the community's input on is sort of the different resources that you think about using or do use when learning to code. And sort of a secondary question is sort of just a reflection on how those resources might have changed over time. So we'll just use my experience in this video. And then hopefully if we're at all successful, people will chime in with their opinions, their sort of points of view on what resources work, what resources don't work, sort of where they're getting stuck, what they like about certain products or certain resource distributors, and whatever you want to call them. So that's sort of the headspace that we're in and sort of the target that we'll pursue in this video. And yeah, so let's get started. Sort of this idea was, I guess, catalyzed this morning, percolating in my head over the last few hours or maybe since going to bed, just in sort of thinking about my own evolution in learning to code, sort of the LTC journey, and sort of thinking about the different types of resources, whether they be reference material, structured course content, sort of like stretch material, like pushing my boundaries, or actual explicit or implicit projects that I've been working on. And sort of like looking back over the last 2, 3, 4 years that I've been interested in LTC, learning to code. And then more specifically or more recently, the last few months where I've like been full-time all in on learning to code, and sort of just reflecting on how that's evolved, both in terms of the languages I've been interested in or focusing on, as well as sort of the types of materials that I find super useful or like are my go-to learning materials. So I guess one way to sort of split the information briefly is, or view the information briefly is, the materials that I use before learning to code full time, or like going into LTC full time, and sort of after. So we'll sort of look at that segmentation, and then we'll break it down further in each one. So before deciding that I wanted to sort of explore pursuing a career in code or in tech or in education with a flavor of tech, whatever you want to call it, I leaned very heavily on resources like YouTube, like LinkedIn Learning, which was formerly lynda.com, and I used a lot of resources on Udemy, which is sort of an open marketplace for content and course creators and content and course consumers, students. And it's sort of like the YouTube of course creation, where anyone can create a course and anyone can take a course. Some of the courses are free, some of the courses are paid. My co-founder Ryan and I actually have taught a number of courses on Udemy. No pressure to take them or even look at them. We just wanted to be honest and full disclose that information. And so I think like reflecting on my technical journey, the first sort of point that I got interested in code, apart from Free Code Camp, was getting into WordPress, and just the idea that I could push a website onto the internet, sort of point and click type stuff, a little more complex, a little more nuanced. And WordPress is a CMS, so a content management system, but you can use it to just like do really interesting and dynamic web pages. Not saying that we did really interesting and dynamic web pages, I'm just saying that's an option. So anyway, we leaned a lot on lynda.com, which is now part of LinkedIn Learning, and sort of pursued structured tutorials in that way. Then eventually we moved into Udemy, because I felt that Udemy, at least some of the courses that I found were a little more detailed or action oriented, and that on my learning journey was really interesting. So there's a instructor who teaches Python named Jose Portela. I have his name somewhere. Jose Portilla. I'm really bad with pronunciation, so we'll link his name in the notes of the description of this video. But I found that his sort of teaching style and content presentation was really, really interesting. Sort of when I was first thinking about learning to code and trying to learn Python. Then, sort of after I formally started the journey of LTC full-time learning to code, I sort of think about 3 or 4 major buckets, maybe 5 buckets. I guess the first is the formal curriculum of the bootcamp I'm in. That obviously won't fit for everyone. Then the second bucket is sort of what I think of as reference material. And so this is like where you would go to reference specific syntax. This could be like w3.com, I think it's called, or MDN, the Mozilla Developer Network for JavaScript, I find is really, really useful and thorough. I particularly like that, partly just because I like JavaScript. And then I think it's like Ruby-docs for a Ruby reference, syntax and that kind of stuff. And then, so that's sort of the reference bucket. The second bucket is sort of structured learning paths or structured courses and structured projects. I guess now we'll name all 4 of them. So the first you have reference materials, the second you have structured learning paths and projects, the third you have unstructured projects and unstructured learning paths, and then the fourth is you have sites to sort of help your technique in terms of developing the skill for coding challenges. So now going back in a sort of unorganized way to structured learning materials, this can be things like Udemy. I find some really good Udemy courses that have information structured in a really, really useful way. And some of those courses have projects that you can do sort of along the way. Probably my personal favorite resource for structured learning and for projects when first learning to code, at least first learning to code JavaScript, is FreeCodeCamp. I can't say enough things about FreeCodeCamp or Quincy Larson. So if you haven't checked out FreeCodeCamp, I would suggest you check it out. It's a little bit different in that there are few, if any, video-based tutorials, at least explicitly on their core curriculum. And so it's like a different sort of learning style. It's more visual and reading-based learning. But I found that they have a pretty interesting and extensive YouTube library. So you can check out their YouTube channel, no pressure. And then, let's see, other structured projects, like Code Academy is fine. There's just a bunch of alternatives. Tuts Plus. I'm not going to name drop all of them, but you should just explore. And as always, we would love to sort of know if you think there are structured learning resources that we should check out for whatever language, but things that you're excited about that you found useful, we would love to know. The third is unstructured projects or unstructured learning, and this is sort of just like very self-directed. Maybe you don't have an outside third party like FreeCodeCamp or like some of the Udemy courses guiding you. It's like very self-directed learning, and I found, at least for me, depending on my mood and where I am in life, exploring different GitHub projects, GitHub repos can be really interesting for that. Or working on a project with a friend or by yourself can be really interesting. So that's sort of the third of unstructured learning. The fourth is this idea of getting better, faster, or just practicing different coding challenges or coding algorithms. And so in the past, I've sort of explored sites like Code Wars, which I think is really cool, sometimes a little slow in terms of the load speeds and stuff, but I really like that. And then HackerRank, I know there's a couple others, but it's sort of up to you, and I think it really depends why you're learning to code, or the reasons, different reasons, you may have many, that you're pursuing LTC, learning to code. So probably coding challenges doesn't make sense for everyone, but I think sort of knowing that they exist and knowing that there are sites and resources out there to help develop that skill set, I think, at least for me, has been super useful. So in summary, we wanted to, in this video, look at sort of two broad categories. The first was the resources and types of resources that I used before formally starting the LTC journey of full-time. And second, the ones and resources after, or that I've sort of explored or started thinking about after. Within the after bucket, we sort of named 4 different groups or 4 different categories. The first was reference material, things like Free Code Camp, MDN, Mozilla Developer Network, and Ruby Docs, just to name a few. The second was structured learning paths and structured projects. This can be like certain Udemy courses, or we really like Free Code Camp. The third is unstructured things that could be exploring someone else's GitHub repo or working on a project by yourself or with a friend or community, whatever. And then the fourth was resources like HackerRank and Code Wars for revving up your skills in coding challenges. So, as is the case, we would love to sort of know if there are certain resources or certain approaches or just ways of thinking about resources or learning materials that you would like to share. We love hearing from you, particularly when you sort of add to the discussion. So we invite you to do that now in the comments section on our website, which sometimes doesn't work. We're working on it, quite literally. And there are a variety of other ways that you could start a conversation within the community. Secondly, we would sort of invite your feedback, whether it's positive, negative, constructive, non-constructive. Again, we love hearing from you, and we like thinking about the different ways that we can improve the project or improve individual videos or sort of assembly or groups of videos. We just want to make this project increasingly relevant, increasingly excellent, and you know, in some ways we started it with a pretty low bar, so always looking for a way to notch up, because we like nacho ups. Yeah, that didn't work. In any case, we appreciate you watching. We'll be reading the comments, so if you wanna say anything, say it there. Elsewise, which I'm not sure is a word. Hopefully we'll see you this afternoon when we make another video this evening, or later this week. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye. Okay, bye.